On the 31st of May 2010, Israeli security forces stormed a humanitarian aid fleet which was attempting to break the Israeli siege on the Gaza Strip. They surrounded the boat, which was in international waters at the time, and killed 10 civilians on board, while detaining and injuring hundreds of others, including dozens of journalists. South African journalist Gadija Davids was part of that group. She was held against her will in an Israeli prison, assaulted, interrogated, and denied consular access and legal representation. So to share more of this story and the implications around it, I'm joined in studio by attorney Ziyaad Patel, an attorney for Gadija Davids. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, and a very good afternoon to you as well.
So first of all, this story, it highlights a humanitarian issue, and there's now an international legal battle around this pretty much against the military chain of command that is responsible. So tell us a bit about this.
That is correct. The humanitarian aid mission was organized by IHH based in Istanbul, Turkey. This organization fundamentally organized human rights activists, medical personnel, journalists, all people from all walks of life who came together on a mission to end the siege of Gaza. This comprised of the flotilla, the Gaza Aid Flotilla as it is commonly known. Gadija was on the Mavi Marmara, the vessel on which the IDF soldiers had boarded and committed the gross attacks that eventually happened from them boarding the Mavi Marmara. Subsequently to that, attorneys based here in South Africa, we utilized mechanisms of South Africa being party to the Rome Statute and having formalized the Rome Statute in terms of the principles of universal jurisdiction. We lodged a complaint in 2011, January, on behalf of Gadija Davids with the South African Police Services, the Directorate of Priority Crimes Investigation, and the National Prosecuting Authorities Unit, the Priority Crimes Litigation Unit, in January of 2011. Subsequently to that, there was a further investigations. I know that South African authorities required expert evidence on issues relating to international humanitarian law.
Okay.
And fundamentally, we received a decision in November 2012, which comprised of, inter alia, the decision that the jurisdictional requirements were met, that a South African citizen aboard the Mavi Marmara was attacked in international waters. South Africa would investigate the case, so the jurisdictional requirements were met. Also, investigation that there were crimes committed against her, and also open the doors for mutual cooperation in the investigation.
Okay, so it is somewhat of an historic achievement. What are the precedent that has been set following this, and what are some of the implications?
Absolutely, there's an international legal precedent that has been set with this case, and it also shows, that South Africa, being a party to the Rome Statute, does have positive consequences, apart from the negative impacts that we've had recently, especially in the Umar al-Bashir case, for instance, where we had the North Gauteng High Court issue an order to detain Umar al-Bashir, and yet again, through diplomatic channels and politicking, he was allowed to leave the territory of South Africa. He's indicted in the International Criminal Court. We're also having, for the first instance, there's a lot of criticism against the ICC that it only prosecutes African leaders. Western leaders are in some way or the other absolved. And I think this decision by the South African Police Services, which was received by my office just on 10th November, on 10th November this year, is a step in a forward direction. And we're also starting to see that Western leaders, Western commanders can also be held accountable in terms of the Rome Statute and South Africa's implementation thereof.
And in terms of being held accountable, those 4 commanders from the Israeli Navy and the Defense Force, they could be arrested if they enter South Africa. What's been said from the Israeli government?
Well, I was in Istanbul last week. I was tasked with, once the decision was received, to inform our counterparts on that side. I also had the opportunity of meeting with Turkish prosecutors and the Turkish legal teams, who welcomed the news very warmly. I am aware that Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet had received information about the arrest warrants. I'm also aware that there were some contradictory statements that were made that sort of emasculated the effect of the decision, as I may say. But I think all those issues have been cleared up. And it's a matter of law. It's a rule of law. South African authorities have made a decision here. And, you know, the IDF chooses at its own peril whether to come into South Africa or not. But my view, and I think it has been restated at our press conference this morning, where I read out the contents of a letter which was placed in dispute, the veracity of the information. Journalist Shannon Ibrahim from IOL came under a lot of pressure to release the sources of the letter.
Okay.
My instructions were very clear from Istanbul that the letter will not be disclosed due to attorney-client privilege as well as confidential sources contained in the letter, and not for the investigation to be jeopardized. And I think Shannon's position has been vindicated. So has the the MRN's position, so has the PSA's position, and most importantly, my client's position has been vindicated. In today's press conference, certain aspects of that letter was read out. So I think Mr. Netanyahu has a pretty much good idea that now that South Africa will enforce the Turkish arrest warrants.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Ziyaad Patel, thank you very much. That was Ziyaad Patel, attorney for Gadija Davids.